We went into the research for this video thinking, you know what? Tight end doesn't actually matter. Every year I go into my fantasy draft and I just do not want to draft a tight end in fantasy. But we did the research for you to figure out if you should even draft a tight end in the top 7 rounds of your fantasy football league. So let's get into it right now. First of all, I looked last year at the top 13 tight ends drafted. This was underdog leagues, but it's going to apply because, again, advance rates and playoff rates are going to be fairly similar. They're indicative of a player's success for a team, a fantasy team, relative to where they were being drafted. And so when you're looking at the top 13 tight ends drafted last year, all these guys had ADP above 140, means they're being taken in the top 12 rounds. The average playoff advance rate, or the average playoff rate, so that means the average amount of times you're getting to the playoffs with these guys on your team. Average them all up. There's 16.8% playoff rate. 16% is average in these leagues, right? Because you're sending 2 of 12 teams to the playoffs. And so that means that if you drafted one of these top 13 guys last year at tight ends, on average, it made no difference. Your chances of getting to the playoffs were average.
Yep.
Okay? There's more to it than that. Let's go ahead and look at these. These are the highest advance rates of any tight end last year. Obviously, Sam Laporta up at the top. Because why? Because his cost relative to how much he helped your team, he was dirt cheap, and he was sending people to the playoffs. He was the top tight end last year, and you were getting him where? 13th round. Okay? Jake Ferguson is a good example. George Kittle was a guy that was going not in the 13th round, was going in the 6th, 7th round, but had a playoff advance rate of 26%. Why? Because he was a good value. And so let's go ahead and look at this. The tight ends, these are all tight ends, again, with an advance rate, a playoff advance rate above average, so above 16%. The average ADP of these tight ends here, 159.3. That puts them, that's 13th round. Almost 14th round.
Wow.
ADP. Right? So let's go ahead and...
Skewed by Sam Laporta some?
A little bit.
Some.
Maybe. We're going to figure it out, though. And you can say, oh, anybody could have said this. Anybody could have, Sam Laporta was blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. I mean, we get it. We saw what Sam Laporta did last year. But let's look at the top 100 tight ends that had above average advance rate for the playoff. The first one is George Kittle. And George Kittle was going there because primarily he was a good value. I mean, George Kittle, every year you see George Kittle, he's being drafted about in this range, but he's been one of the most consistent tight ends from a production standpoint in the last 5 years that we've seen. Obviously, Travis Kelce has been consistent as well. Listen to the last 3 years of production from George Kittle. Tight end 4, tight end 3, tight end 5. Yep. He had the 1 year where he only played 8 games. Before that, tight end 2, tight end 3. So that means he's been a top 5 tight end for 5 of the last 6 years. Does that scream consistency to you? His ADP last year was 67.6. No. Last year was 60.9. Yeah. He's going lower than he was last year. Okay? So he was a guy in the top 100 that had an above average advance rate. The next guy here was TJ Hawkinson. He was being shorted for the same reason.
Yeah, Hawkinson had a ADP of 50.9 last year, which was right around where he was going at price in 2022. And I remember last year going into the fantasy season, we were screaming TJ Hawkinson. I could not get enough of TJ Hawkinson in my drafts. I was like, why is this guy who's going into just as good of a situation as he was in 2022, and why is his price the same? This is a Jordan Addison effect. People thought that Jordan Addison was going to take away from Hawkinson. Lo and behold, shocker, they play different roles. So they weren't going to take away from each other, and they didn't, even with Kirk Cousins being out with an injury halfway through the season. So he goes at the same price in 2023, ends up having a playoff rate of 21.5%, which is well above the average. So now you're seeing Hawkinson go at 148.2. What's the screaming elephant in the room?
He's injured.
Not just an elephant in the room, a screaming elephant in the room. The injury, right? He had a pretty severe ACL tear at the... I don't know. Well...
Have you ever heard an elephant scream?
No.
There's a fat joke in there, but just move on.
Okay. TJ Hawkinson, the reason he's going at this price is because of that ACL tear at the end of last season. People don't expect him to be full strength heading into 2024. A lot of people are saying that he's going to be out for 4 to 6 games, which, by the way, let me just tell you, we haven't heard squat from the Minnesota Vikings. So anyone who tells you that Hawk is going to be out for the first half of the season, don't listen to them, because we don't know yet. I'm not saying that he's not going to be out for a certain amount of time during the regular season, but we haven't heard anything.
He could be out 10 games.
He could be out more than that. He could be out less than that. But what I am saying at prices, at ADP 148.2, getting him in the 13th round of your fantasy drafts for a guy that when he's on the field and when he's playing has literally tight end 1 upside. He was the tight end 1 until he went down last year. You need to take a shot on him, especially when you know that he'll start ramping up and then he'll be healthy towards the end of the year, which is when you play for the championship anyways. So he's a pretty good dart throw, a pretty good second tight end option if you're going to take a shot on him this year.
Yeah.
Another guy that we have here that had really, really good win rates, interestingly enough, Evan Ingram had 20.6% playoff advance rate, which was up there. And the reason being he was the top receiving option for the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, even with Ridley and Christian Kirk on the same offense. And his ADP was 95.7. His ADP now is 78.2. So we got a decent ADP jump there. Not astronomical enough where I'm going to say that I'm out on Evan Ingram. With Ridley out, Brian Thomas in, that really from a opportunity perspective is kind of a lateral move. So I think Evan Ingram could realistically get the same amount of opportunity that he did in 2023.
So those were the only 3 tight ends with ADP above 100 that had an above average playoff advance rate. So let's look at all the guys now. Most of them you'll notice are waiver wire or deep bench level players. So you're having an ADP less than 100. A lot of these guys are in the 200s. And again, the average ADP here was 159. So this year, let's look at potential candidates that are going in these ranges where you typically see high playoff advance rates, and let's identify candidates to do that this year. I'll go through half of these.
Let's start with the top 100.
Yeah, I'll go through half of these, and I'll let you get the bottom
one
half
whose
here.
ADP are in the top 100.
Yeah,
no, we're not giving you a list of 100
So
tight ends.
last year you had a guy at 50. It was TJ Hawkinson that was being drafted, and he ended up having a really high advance rate. Guy being drafted there that we like this year is Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid is going to have plenty of opportunity. He's technically the most talented receiver on the Buffalo Bills. He should be Josh Allen's number 1 target if what we think comes true. And if it does, he has potential to produce like a wide receiver at the tight end position. And when you're talking about his ADP, 52, obviously he's being drafted high because it's being baked into his price that he's going to be that number 1 receiver in Buffalo. But he's somebody that this year could be a league winner. Kyle Pitts is going at pick 60.9 actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nice.
Well, there you go.
And so when you're looking at Kyle Pitts, you had somebody at this exact range last year as well. You had somebody at 65.
It was Kittle.
It was Kittle,
Yeah.
60.9. They have the exact same ADP. So with Pitts got a huge quarterback upgrade. He's playing alongside Drake London. But again, it's Kirk Cousins, right? And it's Bijan actually being utilized correctly. And it's a new offensive system. All of that screams, hey, Kyle Pitts is going to be better. He could be a guy that has an above average playoff rate this year as well.
Now, what's the big difference between those two guys going in this range this year versus last year? Provenness. George Kittle and TJ Hawkinson both had multiple years of productive statistical proof that they could do, even outproduce their ADP. Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid, not so much, especially with Dalton Kincaid. He really is the most unproven. We saw what Kyle Pitts was capable of his rookie year, but that's, we're multiple years removed from that. So it's still, you're a little bit more uneasy about these guys, or at least we are compared to how we felt about Hawkinson and Kittle last year. But again, just given the historical data that we do have, statistically speaking, you do have a pretty good chance at taking a good shot on a guy like Kincaid or Pitts and being successful in that range.
Yeah, and looking at some other guys here, Brock Bowers has an ADP of 95 this year. Evan Ingram was at that ADP last year. The difference obviously being Evan Ingram is a veteran, Brock Bowers is a rookie. Evan Ingram was playing with Trevor Lawrence, Brock Bowers is playing with Gardner Minshew. However, we have seen Gardner Minshew support fantasy-relevant assets. You saw it in the Colts offense last year. He supported Michael Pittman. He also supported Josh Downs, who was the wide receiver 43 as a rookie. And so I think if he can do those two things, I think he could support Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is essentially going to be used as a slot wide receiver in Las Vegas. And so when you add all that up, he is somebody that could, again, you're getting at a discount because of the situation, because he's a rookie, could be a league winner. And then Travis Kelce, which, when's the last time Travis Kelce didn't go in the first round of fantasy drafts?
7 years.
It's been like 7 years.
7 years.
So with that, you're getting him right now in like the 3rd or 4th. If you want to take a shot on Travis Kelce because you're getting that much of a discount on him, we don't blame you at all. We'll probably take a couple shots on Travis Kelce this year just because he is so consistent. He just got a new contract. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes. He's dating Taylor Swift. I mean, that's
like a bonus chance of getting a touchdown every single week.
That counts for something, right?
Yes.
I mean, he's balling out. When Savannah, when we were dating and she'd come to my basketball game, like I'd try as hard as I possibly can.
Yes, you knew you were gonna have a good game.
I mean, like, no, not always, but I would try to.
Of course you would try.
I mean, I was always trying to show out. So those are guys, again, top 100 ADP this year that we think could potentially have very high playoff advance rates this year. And now let's look at the guys in the bottom half. And before we do, I want to mention these two charts, and then you're going to go into this. Yep. Here are the advance rates for taking your tight end 1 before round 7. Okay, so when you look, most time you're taking 2 or 3 wide receivers. These advance rates are 16.8%, 16.9%, 1.5% about, and then 0.09% in the finals. Okay, so that's what let's do side by side, and let's do if you take your tight end 1 after the 7th round. you'll notice here, there is essentially no difference, right? You've got a 17.7%. You got 16.2 if you do 2. But if you did 3 or 4 here, you're in the 17s, right? Your semifinal rates are both in the 1.4s, and you got a finals rate of 0.08 and a finals rate of 0.11 if you took your tight end. And again, so clearly the ones who took 4 here are in 3 and 4 in after round 7 had a significant advantage. Now, how many tight ends should you take? Most likely 2 to 3. If you're going to take 4 tight ends, make sure you're taking shots on young guys like you did last year where you took a Sam Laporta. That makes more sense because, again, if the more shots you take on young guys, the more likely you are to hit on somebody that's a league winner that has a playoff advance rate of like in the 30s, right? That's a big one. So what we found basically is that there's almost no advantage to taking a tight end before round 7 versus taking one after round 7. So without further ado, here are the
shots
guys
that you should the guided dart throws that you should be taking after round 7 in your fantasy drafts. First one, like I already mentioned, is going to be TJ Hawkinson. Literally the only reason he's going at this price is because of last season's injury. It was at the end of the year. There is a certain price point where you definitely want to be reluctant taking a shot on a guy who is coming off of a significant injury. ADP 148 is not that price point. That is a price point where you take a shot on TJ Hawkinson and you get it essentially for free. And if he comes back and he's looking fully healthy and better than people expect, then you've just got massive payoff from that pick in the 13th round of your fantasy draft. Ben Sinnott is going to be the next guy here. I am really, really high on Ben Sinnott going into 2024. I know he's a rookie tight end. I know that it's tough to predict what rookie tight ends are going to be productive right out the gate. And I would be stupid if I were to tell you that Ben Sinnott is going to be the next Sam Laporta. Guess what? If you're looking for the next Sam Laporta in the range of ADP 150 or later, prepare to be disappointed. You're not going to find it, most likely. Ben Sinnott, I think, is a guy that is most likely to do 70% of what Sam Laporta did in 2023, just because of the situation there. I think people are downplaying Cliff Kingsbury as the OC in Washington and what tight ends can do in his offense. There have been some statistical breakdowns saying that there have been tight ends that just can't be productive in the Kingsbury offense, which, by the way, we only had a 2-year sample size of that in Arizona with him as a head coach. And the sample size that we had of Zach Ertz healthy in a Cliff Kingsbury offense was top 6 production. It was very, very, very good. You tack onto that the fact that Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback coming into the NFL with an admittedly limited, at least to us, seems like he has a limited amount of passing versatility based off of what he did,
especially in the intermediate
film.
range. Like you saw a lot of holes in his tape in the intermediate range in college.
Yes,
so he has to develop that. Great deep ball, but can he support that? I don't know, but we love Ben Sinnott.
No,
anyway,
but Ben Sinnott specifically is the perfect match for what Jaden Daniels does best as a passer, coming as a fresh rookie into the NFL, and I think that could be a really, really special pairing. We like to play up the rookie quarterback with the rookie receiver or tight end, or whoever is there in the same offense, and this is no exception going into 2024. This could be really, really special, and you're getting him at ADP 174.
Yeah. Cade Otton is on this list. Cade Otton is the tight end 1 in Tampa Bay. He was incredibly inconsistent last year. How is that offense going to look different without Dave Canales there? That's kind of the question.
Yeah.
Him being a tight end 1 in a regular fantasy draft, you're probably not drafting him, or you'll be drafting him at the very end of your drafts. In best ball, he's going in the 13th, 14th, 15th round, something like that. I drafted him in a best ball draft, I think in the 15th or 16th round. So, there maybe worth taking a shot on if you're completely punting the position. Noah Fant is somebody who now you have Colby Parkinson, who's also on this list. Yeah. Colby Parkinson's gone. Also, you have a different offensive system in Seattle there now, one that used a ton of tight ends before. Maybe Noah Fant, who is a good talent, can actually emerge as somebody who can make a splash from fantasy perspective this year. Again, ADP 176. Jelani Woods, ADP 204.
It's wide open there.
He's the tight end 1 in Indy. Like Kylan Granson is good, but he's not going to take away from Jelani Woods to an extent to where Jelani
he's super
couldn't
small
be.
Too.
He's tiny.
Like he's very undersized.
They drafted the Mallory kid, and I don't think he's going to do anything. I mean, I think they still like Jelani. I think it's why they haven't drafted a tight end. Even though I think they wanted Bowers this year. And then Colby Parkinson, maybe the best guy on this list. This is the last guy on this list, ADP of 212, but they paid him starter money in LA. And I like Tyler Higbee, and Tyler Higbee's been somebody that's been a really good target for fantasy football teams in the last couple of years. Yeah. But Colby Parkinson's
Parkinson
a guy.
now.
I think he's the guy there. So, again, these are guys that we think could have a chance. I mean, we'll be taking some shots on these guys because, they do have ADPs that are low enough to where it's not going to super matter if you draft me. There's not a ton of opportunity cost to taking a tight end like this. So
no. And obviously you're going to have on the flip side too, some tight ends like, well, we saw all these targets that you have at tight end domain, guys. What about the guys that you're not targeting given their respective price? Well, we're going to tell you, we got 4 guys here. And look, we are well aware, just like anyone is well aware, that the more productive you are, the higher ADP is going to go. But these are some of the guys that were productive last year, that were very productive last year, and their ADP went up so much that we just know for a fact that their playoff advance rate is not going to be near what it was in 2023. So when they're being drafted at most likely their ceiling, you know that you're probably going to get average return out of them at their current price. Sam Laporta, unfortunately, is one of those guys. I mean, his ADP rise was 5 times what it was in 2023 this year. So
it doesn't mean don't draft Sam Laporta. It doesn't mean
don't draft Sam Laporta. It
does not mean that. We are not telling you not to draft Sam. I am getting this out of the way so we don't have to deal with this. We are not telling you not to draft Sam Laporta. Correct. But his playoff advance rate is going to be average.
Yes. So just know you know what you're getting from Sam Laporta at price, but don't expect much on top of that where he's currently going in your fantasy drafts.
He's probably a safe option. He's not a league winner. Yes. McBride is the same way. McBride's 5 times where he was going last year. McBride, draft him if you want the safety. If McBride is in that offense, gets as many targets as he was in sports last year, then maybe you see Trey McBride have a 17%, there we go, got it, above average playoff rate. But probably not much higher than that because of his cost, because the cost is baked into it so much. Mark Andrews, he fell 1.5 rounds, and we're just...
For good reason. He fell for good reason, but also Mark Andrews has been riding on the coattails of what he did in 2021 now for 3 years. And he's been drafted accordingly, like with the potential of the upside that he had in 2021. And he just hasn't lived up to that since. And between the injuries that he struggled with last year and now Zay Flowers coming into the offense and, just multiple other weapons, a different type of looking up. Like, to me, I just don't think that he's very safe, but don't expect a ton of super high upside return out of Mark Andrews at his current price, even with the slight fall in ADP.
And then Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson's going 2 to 3 times higher than he was last year. He had the second highest playoff advance rate last year. And again, Ferguson, Andrews, McBride, Laporta, are we telling you not to draft them? No. If you're taking upside / league winning shots in other rounds, maybe you want a safe tight end, right? It's all going to depend on your draft strategy. Yep. However, what we're saying is that we actually like taking shots on some of the lower round guys, the guys with an ADP below 50 or even below 100, before we kind of like taking the, guys that are going in the top 50 picks in fantasy football drafts, just purely because the upside at tight end and the league win rates for tight ends, they're a little bit more condensed than they are obviously at running back and wide receiver, right? You've got a lot more of those players in the NFL. And so when you're hunting for tight end, you can hunt for 2 things. Safety, if you want safety, take Laporta. If you want upside, shoot for one of the guys we mentioned in this video, because again, the statistics show there's almost no advantage to taking wide receiver or your first tight end before round 7 as there is to doing one after round 7. So do us a huge favor, make sure you drop a like on this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Helps us out. Those 2 things, free, easy, they take 5 seconds and really helps the channel. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you later.